Okay, here we go. So, Lodu is an elf.
Right.
And the sky people, there's a lady named Madul. And she basically adopts Lodu because
he's a preteen elf boy. His family has been massacred somehow. And it was at a festival where most of the sky ships had already left. And Madul's ship was one of the last when they found him. They knew he was an elf, but they didn't think they could leave him.
Should I call ahead to that Holiday Inn and see if we can get a room?
Okay. Wait, the mom's name's Madul, right?
Madul, yeah.
And we call her Merdi for short? Madu? Okay. So his family was massacred. They waited as long as they could before they had to leave because... What's going on? Oh. So they adopted him. And since...
So the trip across the ocean and back takes over a year, depending on the winds.
And they have to leave because of the gases that fill up the ships.
And the winds have started to change. They're blowing offshore now. And if they don't catch the winds, then they will not be able to catch up with the rest of the tribe.
Right.
And their tribe is special because they are the minstrel tribe, which is interesting because the women in this particular tribe of sky people are very important. They are the great minstrels. They know how to memorize the histories and the laws of the people
in song form.
And put them in verse, yes.
And they're important because whenever there's a dispute, then their tribe is docked with the other tribes, and they are the ones who are the neutral negotiators and tell the facts of what happened in the past, so that way there's no argument.
Correct. So they take in this elf boy, and for the first period of the year, Madu and Lodu are bonding. Madu has lost a baby the year before, and she was heartbroken. So when this little boy came along, her heart just opened up, and Lodu, his heart, felt the same thing
because his family was just killed.
Right, and so a very unusual thing happened. There was a bond that formed between a human and an elf,
which is very rare.
So they made the journey across the ocean and back to the original place of festival. And when they got back to festival, the wood elves were there. And so Madu, who was kind of heartbroken because she had bonded with his elf, but felt that it was important for him to go with his kind, brought him back to the elves. But the elves felt there was something different about the boy now. He didn't want to fit in with the elves.
No, he had fallen in love with the ways of the sky people, and there's just something more there for him. He didn't feel connected with the elves as he did with the people.
Well, and he had the connection with Madu.
Yeah.
So, long story short, the elves got together and they decided that for this one boy, they were going to let him be raised by humans. Probably because they felt that since the elf boy was an immortal, eventually he would, say that humans were not his kind and he would come back.
Yeah.
Little did they know.
Okay, so Lodu is going to be the only child on the sky ship for a little while, and then along come a couple little babies, and since he is an elf, he stays the same for quite some time. As these babies grow up, we have supply ships, there's two different types of men. There's the long, lean, strong, agile men who work at the top of the ship, and then the bulkier, muscular men. So Ulrich is going to be one of those. Magnus is going to be one of the stronger, leaner ones.
And as an elf, Lodu is going to tend towards the tall and lean.
Exactly. And then there's also going to be one more main character, Alessandra. And she's going to be the very beautiful...
Almost like the alpha female.
Exactly. The one that Magnus is going to be trying to get the attention of. And she is going to be going to get the attention of Lodu, who does not care about girls and will not care about girls until he's around 50 years old. So good luck there. Okay.
So in their early childhood, Alessandra is intrigued by Lodu, and she's attracted to him. You know, he's kind of foreign, you know, exotic looking, and she finds that interesting, even though Lodu, as a pre-adolescent elf, has no interest in any female, especially a human female. Whereas Magnus, who's the alpha male, is all about Alessandra, and he's trying to get her attention. So he's always frustrated that Alessandra is chasing after Lodu, and it causes some tension, you know, where Magnus is always beating his chest, you know, trying to get attention. Lodu's kind of clueless as to what's going on because he couldn't care less about the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
And Ulrich is kind of the comic relief in all this, you know, relieving the tension between Magnus and Lodu.
Yeah, he's kind of like the one that's bringing them together at the very beginning. And then what brings them together fully as friends is one of the adventures that they kind of go on is there's a storm and it kind of rips at the sails. And how did you describe it? Magnus had volunteers to go up because they need a smaller person.
The rip is in a sensitive part of the balloon, where if somebody heavy gets up where it could be sewed, it would probably make the tear worse instead of better. Now Magnus is young at the time; he's probably only about 10, but because he's wiry and strong, he thinks he can repair the sail, and everybody has thought that, you know, this kid is going to be the chief someday, so they decide to give him a chance. Well, he gets up into the rigging, and of course the wind blows and catches him, and all of a sudden he's hanging upside down from the rigging, right above the tear, and people are worried. They don't know what to do. Lodu, without even thinking, just climbs into the rigging. Even though he looks younger, he is an older elf, and he has all the agility of an elf, and he's able to get up, free Magnus, and together Magnus and Lodu are able to repair the tear.
Well, Magnus is able, because of the way that he got pulled, was able to repair that one section that wouldn't have been able to be repaired otherwise. And that's another reason why Lodu made sure he got some of the credit, because it would have been something that wouldn't have been done otherwise.
And because Lodu was very clear to all of the adults that he could not have done the repair without Magnus, and Magnus, you know, got a lot of credit for it, Magnus changed his mind and his attitude about Lodu. And from that point on, they became the best of friends.
Okay, so we're going to describe Adia and Alessandra. Basically, they're both like the best minstrels in this tribe.
Adia has the best memory, and she can remember every verse from every history.
She has the best voice too, but she downplays it because she does not like the attention. She doesn't like being pretty up, dolled up, as one would if they were called to be the minstrel at one of the festivals.
Whereas Alessandra is just knockout gorgeous, And so when
likes
she
to show it
sings,
off.
people are just enthralled as much by her physical beauty as by her talent.
Adia is very beautiful as well, but she doesn't really show it because she is more of a tomboy, so she kind of disguises it from people.
Adia has thick, dark hair that she's actually embarrassed by, so she pulls it back tightly in either a ponytail
Or a
she'll
tight
braid
bun.
it tightly so that people can't see, how beautiful her hair is. Whereas Alessandra's hair is more of an auburn, and it's also gorgeous. But if you were to compare the two, you would think that Adia's hair, when it's free flowing, is prettier.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the Sky people have darker hair. It's very rare that they'll have like lighter hair. So, because I forgot what I was going to say about that. So Adia's nickname is Audie, and she really likes Magnus, and is annoyed because Magnus doesn't give her the time of day, basically. And so Magnus they have a little bit, basically, where he goes and calls her
Addie.
and she goes, "That's not my name.
Addie.
It's Audie." Okay, so Alessandra Walst is the best, or not the best, but one of the best singers and memorizers of the minstrels. She really likes Lodu, and she pretends that she doesn't remember and needs help remembering. And because he is elvish, he has great memory, and he has a higher pitched voice.
So, because he's young, as far as elves, he has a soprano voice. So, they teach him all of the main verses that a woman, a soprano, would learn. And so he learns the histories extremely well because elves have great memories. Whereas Alessandra, who's trying to get his attention, pretends that she's not learning the histories very well. And so she's always saying, "Lodu, will you please help me with this?" And Lodu, doesn't realize that she's flirting, and so he just goes along with it, which makes Magnus all the madder.
And then another side note is that once they grow older and Lodu still stays the same size, she starts trying to create her backup plan. Her main plan is to attract the main chief of all of the Sky people, main chief's son. But her backup plan is the chief of her ship, which would be Magnus. And so she starts flirting with him occasionally, planting that seed on him. But all the while, anytime that they have like a festival or where they're with the other tribes, she is full out going after the top.
And Lodu, at one of the big festivals, sees Alessandra in full-out predatory mode going after the chief son of the biggest tribe. And he realizes that his friend has been led along all the time. So he kind of coaxes Magnus into going into the center of the festival, just to play the games and that type of thing, but with the intent of seeing Alessandra tracking down the son of the biggest tribe chief. And when Magnus sees this, he blows his top.
Yeah. And I think the turning point for when he actually sees somebody else, which would be Adia, would be when Alessandra gets sick one time for the festivals and she can't sing, And so the next best singer would be Adia. So they force her to dress up and doll up and look pretty. And that's when he sees her as the full package. You know, the friend that was there all along, but also is beautiful, which is what caught his eye, and able to see past her being just a friend. So the sails on the ship, or the balloon, is made out of the special silk that's only created by the certain species of giant spiders.
And these spiders spin a web that they weave between the trees, and they will catch even large creatures like deer and antelope and sometimes even people. So they're quite predatory. But the sky people have learned that using the furnaces of their sky ship to burn this special herb sedates the spiders, and they can actually catch the spiders and milk them for their silk. But it takes a special skill, and more than one sky person has thought that they've had the spider, and the spider catches them.
Okay, so to catch the spider, they bring their ships over where the spider's lair is, and that's when they let the herbs and
The smoke drip down between the trees.
and once they think the spider is down, that's when they climb down the ropes to gain access to the spider.
They have to be especially careful because even the slightest wind can blow the sedating smoke away, and then the spiders wake up quickly. So it's a very dangerous thing. And on this particular adventure, the men were down in the trees collecting the silk when Lodu, who is now manning one of the sky ships, realized that the wind was starting to pick up in the trees. And the men were so preoccupied they didn't realize it. The spiders were starting to wake up. And Lodu had to quickly go down to the ground level with a backpack full of the special herb. And he had to light fires in among the trees where the spiders were to keep them restful, because the smoke from the sky ships was no longer reaching the spiders.
And because Lodu went down, so did Ulrich and Magnus to help him, even though he told them to stay.
So Magnus and Ulrich went around warning all the men while Lodu was keeping the fires going, but the fires were starting to use up all of the fuel. The men made a mad rush up the ships as the spiders were converging on them. And of course, the last one up the rope was Lodu. And Lodu was halfway up the rope when one of the largest spiders grabbed onto the rope and started to shake it and started to climb after him. And Lodu was climbing as high as he could, and the spider was right on his heels. The mandibles were almost on his heels when he reached the very bottom of the sky ship. Ulrich, the strongest, reached over and he was holding Magnus by his heels. Magnus grabbed Lodu's hand and pulled him up as Lodu reached out with his knife and cut the rope before the spider could jump onto the ship.
Perfect. So from then on, Lodu's nickname was Spider's Bane. Okay.
So during the festival, where Lodu exposes Alessandra actually has coaxed the chief of the big tribe off into the trees.
The son
of the chief. And she's getting ready to make out. Well, when Lodu gets Magnus to see all this, Magnus makes a big to-do, trying to embarrass the son of the chief. Well, the son of the chief had a lot of friends at the festival, and they all gathered around, and they were getting ready to pound on Lodu and Magnus. Well, here comes Ulrich, and he's got a turkey leg in one hand, and he sees his friends about to get pounded, and one of the biggest boys from the other tribe came and pushed Ulrich in the chest, and he quickly realized that was a mistake because it was like trying to push
A boulder.
Ulrich grabbed him by the wrist and casually
Lifted him up and flung him.
flung him into a tree, knocking him out. The other boys turned, and one by one, Ulrich just plowed through them like they were nothing. And Magnus and Lodu were amazed. They're like, how long have you been able to do that? And Ulrich, who, not even knowing that he had done something special, said, I don't know, like forever?
Taking another bite of the turkey leg. So Ulrich, from then on, was nicknamed
Ulrich Stonehands.
Stone Hands. Okay, so once Alessandra was kind of
Exposed.
as like the shallow person she was, Lodu stopped working with her and started helping out Adia,
And so Adia really became known as the expert as far as the histories of the tribe. So her place as a minstrel moved up, while Alessandra was still valued for her ability to persuade people, primarily because of her great beauty.
and was
Adia
used
was
more
able
often.
to persuade people because of her thorough knowledge of the histories.
Okay, hang on. Okay, so Adia wasn't used just yet. Once one of the festivals came about, Alessandra, being the one that they normally went to, became ill and couldn't sing. She lost her voice. And so they couldn't use her as a tool, for her beauty and her voice. So they had to come up with the next best, or the first best, but not as beautiful, so we think, which would be Adia. And so they had to doll her up and show off her beauty, basically.
Lodu's mother, Madul, was the one that took Adia and took her into one of the sky ships and really worked some magic.
Mm-hmm. But she only agreed to go out and be the main if Lodu sang with her, and because they had been working together on their histories, and they had a great harmony, and she felt confident when they were together.
And this was like a novel thing because before this time, men and women never sang more
Duets.
Yeah, the men normally are just baritones, and they just provide rhythm and background, whereas the women, being the tenors and the sopranos, sang the main verses in the histories. But in this case, because Adia insisted, they were allowed to sing.
And because he had more of a soprano voice, because he was elvish and hadn't gotten his deeper voice just yet, they made an exception.
And it was the best received recitation of the history in the memory of anyone. In fact, the fame of this duo spread among the tribes, and they started to become the choice for reciting the histories and resolving the disputes among all the tribes at the festivals. So, the aging thing becomes kind of an issue. Lodu is an elf, and he ages slower. So when his friends are teens, and Lodu is in his early 20s, he looks smaller than they do. They are reaching adult size by their late teens, and Lodu still looks like an adolescent male. He doesn't actually catch up until his friends reach about 30, and he would be about 45 years old when he starts to look like he's 20. His friends, because they're sky people and they're out in the sun and the wind all the time, are starting to age. They're starting to get deeply tanned skin and wrinkles, and so they look a little bit older than their years, whereas Lodu just looks like a young man at that time. So somewhere around 25 or 30 is when Magnus and Adi finally get together. And they get married, and they start to have a family. And Lodu, who's still quite young for an elf, is still not interested in those things. He sees that they're
Proceed on the current freeway.
preoccupied with their family, and he decides it's time for him to go out and explore the greater world. So he looks for his opportunity, and when they are next to the Great Plains, he decides that he is going to go with the plain sailors, and he leaves Magnus and Adi for a long period of time.